So as teachers with finite time and resources to do our jobs, we're constantly torn between the imperative of simple course management and more ambitious learning goals that demand a richer pedagogy, especially in traditionally low-stakes, high-enrollment courses and programs like general education. This is the problem addressed in part by the recent shift to a new model for general education at UNF, which many of you may be familiar with, that emphasizes the development of students' intellectual competencies over rote acquisition of disciplinary content. The traditional gen ed model did not support or encourage pedagogical innovation or high-impact teaching. Often, gen ed is delivered by novice teachers and contingent faculty to huge enrollments, difficult conditions. Just dragging students through the content is the bar for success often. We go in, we lecture on the facts and the basic skills, we get out and hope students learn something, simple course management. It can be difficult to do anything else. In the new gen ed program, how does one teach and assess competencies like writing and critical thinking, new expectations of our gen ed program, in a class of, say, 200 students? Giving students something to think about is different from actually teaching them to think, making them practice, and assessing their skill gains. This means that even inspired teaching may not really add intellectual value. Teaching critical thinking requires opportunities for students to do authentic work of problem solving that our disciplinary methods are designed to address, and then to get constructive feedback on their work. Space for problem solving, for original observation, analysis, hypothesis, research, experimentation, interpretation, and argumentation often does not exist in the traditional gen ed lecture hall. So how does an instructor give students pedagogically meaningful practice, provide feedback, and create opportunities for improvement in such a large class without being overwhelmed? Blended learning strategies and the will to rethink how we conceptualize assignments and written work can, in at least some cases, make the teaching and assessment of intellectual competencies manageable, even in the largest classes. General education is one of the most promising areas of our curriculum in which to encourage the use of high-impact blended learning strategies, not only because digital tools and blended learning offer a means to meet the heightened expectations of our competency-based program. We should encourage technological and pedagogical innovation in gen ed because gen ed itself matters. And putting forward high-quality, pedagogically ambitious introductory courses should be one of the highest priorities of a university concerned about retention, graduation rates, and the preparation of students for success in majors and careers. Teaching general education offers a special challenge. Instructors must figure out how to accelerate low-revving freshmen from 0 to 60 in one semester, usually while teaching high enrollments with little or no grading or other support. The traditional gen ed courses in many departments may enroll over 100 students in a single section. Many such courses have long been taught as straight lectures, as fact-based introductions to the disciplines. It can be hard to imagine doing anything other than lecture in such a large, low-level course in which student participation during limited class time can be challenging or impossible. The problem is compounded by the fact that instructors for gen ed courses are already stretched thin. In many of our departments, adjuncts and untenured faculty end up teaching large gen ed sections. Thus, we give the highest enrollment courses in our departments to colleagues who are already the most overworked, undercompensated, underprepared, and inexperienced. Moreover, one cannot expect adjuncts and new faculty, who may soon stop teaching gen ed, to coordinate with each other and invest deeply in order to develop the pedagogical continuity, identity, and sense of purpose of a gen ed course. As a result, we end up with courses that are mainly effective at generating credit hours. No offense to the undersupported, hardworking colleagues who are keeping this engine running. This is a big problem because general education courses are arguably the most important foundational courses we teach. Introducing students to college learning and expectations is a big responsibility. Ensuring that young students make learning gains that prepare them for success in their majors is an even bigger responsibility. Unfortunately, we often structure our programs, saving the best for last, so that students do not take courses with rigorous expectations and high-impact pedagogy until they are juniors or seniors. By that time, it's too late for many. By failing to put our best foot forward, we hurt our retention and graduation rates. We send some students into the majors unprepared to do serious work. Perhaps worst of all, We turn the complexity and majesty of our intellectual disciplines into a fact-based slog that culminates in a multiple-choice question. Not only do students not develop intellectual competencies in communication and critical thinking, we are often left lamenting that they fail to demonstrate the basic factual mastery that such courses aim to promote. Blended learning can be a game changer in traditional high-enrollment gen ed courses. Our institutional challenge is how to develop and share effective strategies and uses of technology with colleagues who are already stretched thin just managing their courses. There is a learning curve associated with using technology in the classroom, and the laissez-faire culture of college teaching makes it difficult to advise and educate colleagues in the use of new tools and strategies. In what follows, I share a strategy from my own teaching that demonstrates how blended learning can create both opportunities to address intellectual competencies and to engage students early in their education through varied and higher impact pedagogy. ARH 2000, Art Appreciation, is the largest, lowest level general education course in the art history curriculum in my department, Art and Design. One section enrolls approximately 200 students per semester, and students are mostly undeclared freshmen or have declared majors outside the humanities. In 2013-14, I redesigned this course to meet the new standards of our competency-based general education program to produce learning gains in critical thinking. Teaching critical thinking, as I see it, requires significant opportunities for students to practice and not just to learn about the authentic critical methods of a discipline. To do experiments, conduct research, work with primary sources, make original observations, pose questions, investigate hypotheses, interpret results, make and defend arguments, etc. My principal learning objectives in the course are, 1, to teach students to make valid empirical observations using critical terminology appropriate to my field. 2, teach students to reason inductively by making analytic comparisons. And 3, teach students to form logical hypotheses or draw logical implications from their empirical and inductive observations. A chief obstacle to meeting these goals is giving 200 students the opportunity to practice these methods of thought and get meaningful feedback on their work. I can teach students the terms of discourse and critical inquiry in class, but a class of 200 students is not a discussion section. And it is impossible to mentor and respond individually to student work at that scale using a traditional approach to assigning and grading student work. To accomplish the new goals of my course, I transformed traditional classroom discussions and analytical writing assignments into blended learning experiences that take students through all the stages of a critical method. A simply widely used digital tool is key to my approach. Blackboard group discussions. This isn't fancy stuff. At the heart of my course are 7 Blackboard group discussion assignments. The 7 discussions build on each other across the semester, each one introducing a new critical method or offering an opportunity to refine and practice a skill we've introduced. Discussions take place in groups of 7 to 10 students, and they're structured as case studies of mystery images, single works of art for which I provide pictures but no other associated data. The images of these obscure artworks, presented without titles, dates, artist names, etc., challenge students to solve an open-ended problem with no pre-existing solution. What is this thing, essentially? What does it mean? How do we begin to describe and articulate the object? What terms and concepts have we learned that apply in a meaningful description of the object? What are the relative values of different observations we can make? How do we coordinate analytical points and discrete observations in a synthetic description that makes sense of the operation of the parts of the whole? This problem is also an authentic problem for my discipline. How does one make sense of an artwork that has only, for instance, recently been rediscovered or discovered, and for which we may thus lack any prior basis for understanding? Students working cooperatively in groups each post their own original empirical or inductive analysis. Each discussion is focused either on describing or comparing. And then they reply asynchronously to their group members' posts. Replies are intended as a means of evaluating classmates' arguments. The group's goal in competition with the other groups is to put forward the strongest, best, most logical, most objective, and insightful explanation of the artwork. Thus, students must evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their own and their classmates' analyses. One student in each group is responsible on a rotating basis for composing a synthesis of the discussion that makes the group's best argument. Every student is graded individually on participation. No one suffers if a slack group member fails to contribute. In any case, the assessment is designed to produce more meaningful critical feedback than a grade. I, the instructor, read each of the group's discussion threads and final arguments. I call observations, comments, and arguments from the student discussions that both reflect positive examples of analysis and others that demonstrate common errors of understanding, of observation, or of reasoning. Rather than responding individually to every student, or even to each group, I write a single 2,000 to 3,000 word written response to the entire class that offers a critique of specific observations and issues raised in the group discussions. I use this critique both to clarify errors and misunderstandings and to explain the strengths of examples of effective analysis and argument. Each of my written responses offers feedback not only on student analysis, but also provides a constructive perspective on the critical methods, empirical analysis, inductive reasoning, that the exercise of the discussion was designed to support. These lengthy, sophisticated written responses to the students' work as a whole take the place of the short and much less substantive written commentary that I would ordinarily have provided to individuals, but that is not practical or possible at such a scale. It is the richest, most meaningful, most pedagogically satisfying feedback I've ever given my students. After I return my written commentary on their discussions, our focus shifts back to the classroom. In class, I lead a Socratic discussion of major issues and observations that emerged in the online group discussions. Everyone in the class is already deeply versed in our topic, having conducted their own discussions and received my detailed feedback. So we hit the ground running, using our precious face time to push further. What questions do we still have? What new insights offer promising avenues for future research? I guide students to key observations and ideas they may have missed, and I use the class discussion as a bridge to introduce our next online discussion topic, which starts with the same image often, but requires students to practice a new method of thinking and investigation. Over the course of 7 Blackboard discussion assignments, we study 3 images. Students write about 3,000 to 4,000 words of analysis, and they get back about 15,000 words of criticism and feedback on their written and analytical work. This is a lot for a group of 200 students in a gen ed class. All of this culminates in the final project of the semester, a 1,000-word mystery image essay in which the students individually must put all of the skills they've learned to use. This is the one piece of writing in the course for which I return an individual grade and feedback in the form of rubric scores using Blackboard rubrics. It is a labor of love, grading 200 essays at the end of the semester, but one that is well worth it to me when I see the learning gains that students have made. In fact, my new approach does not involve more work, though it is more productive. I have internalized a lesson as a teacher that I first learned as a kid. I remember my dad telling me, "Let the hammer do the work." You don't have to swing so hard when you use the right tool correctly. And we have a lot of nails to drive in gen ed, and blended methods of instruction can be powerful drivers of learning when we use them creatively and effectively. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have 5 minutes for questions, if anyone has any questions. In the back, yeah.
I've been teaching a couple of online or gen ed classes dealing with music, basically music appreciation, jazz music. And I tried, I'm still kind of in the formative stages, but tried some of the methods that you're talking about. And one thing I found when there were group participation, the students would get angry at each other because some of the students wouldn't participate and others would do all the work. And I ended up giving up and making it individual assignments as opposed to group projects with 150 kids arguing about who did more of the work.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you dealt with that, if you found a way to, I mean,
Sure.
You could just say you don't get a good grade, but I found it more tedious than successful.
Absolutely. No, I make it very clear from the beginning that everybody is held individually accountable for their work. So if you don't do your work, you don't get a grade. You fail. It has absolutely no impact on the group. And the group's grade is not improved or diminished by failure to participate. It is bad for morale not to have students participating. And I do, when I have students who are continually non-performing, I modify our group structure so that I edit them out, essentially. But the simple fact of the matter is that I'd say to my students, it shouldn't bother you if this guy doesn't do it, because it has no impact on you. Now, group work is a nightmare in large classes to organize and to coordinate and to evaluate. And so I have a strict rule that I never give an assignment in which anybody's grade can be in any way adversely affected by the failure to perform by another person. Yes.
Yeah.
Are there groups meeting? I think I'm okay with my voice. Are there groups meeting outside of the classroom, in the classroom, virtually, or in person, or kind of a combination
So
of
the way
those?
Blackboard discussions work is that you have a virtual group, and the students know each other's names. I give them access to their emails, and they can contact each other. But I have no expectation that they ever meet each other. That, again, in a class of 200 students in a gen ed freshman course is just an impossible expectation. And so they're working entirely online, asynchronously. The way I structure the discussions is you must post your first comments by a certain date. And then there's a follow-on period of days during which they are supposed to read each other's comments and reply. So it's all asynchronous until we get into the classroom. We spent about a week on this discussion process of them writing and then responding, and then me reading and replying as a whole to the entire class. And then after that, after they get my criticism back, then we come into class and we have a real-time discussion. This is the blended FaceTime component. Yes?
How do you make sure that they don't use a Google image search to find out what those
Sure. Oh, I tell them, of course, about Google image search and make sure that everybody's on the same footing. The simple way to do this is that, as in most of our fields, despite the information age in which we live, there are still plenty of obscure primary objects in our fields, things that we don't have answers for. And this is what I do. It's an absolutely important thing for me to choose things that they cannot gain information about just by Googling. So they can drop that in the image, in the Google bar all day long, and they'll find a reproduction of it online, but with absolutely no relevant data. You know, what do you do, for instance, with an object from the Middle Ages that even the museum that owns it doesn't have a date for, right? You know, those things where you go in and it says, artist, unknown, date, hypothetical, we don't know what this is. So what do we do when you encounter a primary object like that? That's what our freshmen need. It's not facts about things we know about, but the experience of having to learn what they need to know to digest something they can't get information about. And then that's what these discussions are really designed to promote. And also to prevent that kind of easy out of paraphrasing or cutting and pasting. And I just make it impossible for them to do it. I Google search every image I use, see what comes up.